Well, hi, Michael.
Great to see you, Anne. How are you doing?
I'm great. It's a sunny day. It's a sunny day.
It's a beautiful day. It's a great day to talk about Exhibition Interrupted. Maybe could you say something about the title,
Yeah.
Exhibition Interrupted?
Yeah, I remember having a phone call with you last summer, and in a way being awoken, I guess, to the fact that COVID wasn't going away. I was in the process of already making a physical exhibition. As you know, I was working in the shop and building these screens, and it was going to be about these architectural screens, my most recent work, but also about some earlier work, and bringing those together, in the marble room, which we use as our exhibition gallery. It forced us in our conversations and me and my thinking to ask, how do you do an exhibition in the COVID era? Because you can't have an opening. Not too many people are going to be in the gallery, some maybe, but they'll be alone if they are in there. And it just caused a rethinking, and I think actually a restructuring that is stronger than my original thoughts for this. So certainly interruption has to do with the fact that this is not an exhibition in the conventional sense. But it also plays on an idea about inscription. So I had been thinking that I wanted to put these screens in the marble room. The idea of this being part of an interrupted series really comes from not only the gallery opening being interrupted, but also this idea of inscribing into a space, into a site, we'll say, other works that then create a kind of overlay of meaning or an overlay of readings, new narratives.
In terms of this exhibition itself, could you describe it a little bit? Will it be in the marble room? Will it not be in the marble room? Will there be physical pieces? What will the exhibition consist of?
Actually, where the pieces are, and they are physical, will be in these threshold areas between the atrium and the marble room, and they're purposely situated within those three doorways that we know are there between those two rooms. And so, in a way, they kind of negotiate that boundary and allow the visitor to really think about that threshold of crossing between one room and the other, and also not being able to enter the marble room. So the way that the exhibition is being made is that you look through these screens, or you occupy the screens, but you're never physically free to wander around in the marble room. I think of it that way because I think that the marble room, in a way, is a kind of ghost. And I want to really kind of pump up the area around the thresholds and have the visitor sort of be situated literally almost within the wall between those two spaces. The video part will actually be able to explore that idea even further, because we're able to get out onto that balcony, what would have been the top steps of the approach to Slocum Hall. And so we can actually stage the screens as if one were able to come in from outside, a kind of a ghost presence that's no longer, of course, possible. Another kind of screen, we'll say the projection screen, will be present in the marble room. So you will be able to see the videos through the physical screens looking at these projected images.
As you suggested, we initially had thought to do this in the marble room, which was the vestibule, which was a kind of a liminal space where you went from the outside of Slocum Hall into this liminal zone, into this kind of transition space, and then into the atrium. And you became very interested in that as a kind of historical recovery of that space, but to think about how the marble room become not only a transition space historically as it was, but how could you think of it now as a kind of a transitional, liminal passageway space between the digital and the physical.
I remember when I was first in Slocum Hall that the marble room was basically erased. It was a storage room, and honestly, no one ever went in there. Somebody must have had a key, but it was full of boxes, and it just wasn't part of the life of the school at all. And I think that goes back to the 60s when the big staircase that Slocum Hall had was taken off the building. And when I was preparing for this exhibition, I was sitting in the atrium sketching the doors from the atrium to the marble room, and I realized, my God, these have these beautiful hinges. These are swing doors, but they've been refitted as locking doors. But to look at the staircase and then to consider the way that those crazy marble patterns, the quad-matched marble in that room, were all part of an idea of transitioning from the exterior into the atrium, that it was really a place of transition. Even the doors themselves were just swing doors. It just made me think that the marble room was sort of put out of commission. Its use was now up for grabs, and it was no longer useful in that old sense of knowing what a vestibule might be and how it might act. And then it got lost again, right, with COVID, because it can no longer really be an exhibition gallery. So there's a kind of a lost and found aspect to it. A screen is in itself a transitory element. I'm really fascinated with that. And so I see this exhibition interrupted as playing on the vestigial nature of this room that had been transitory, is no longer, and makes us think about all of those kinds of transitions maybe a little more deeply. This kind of hybrid nature of this show, there are physical elements, and then there are also these videos. And the videos, it's interesting to think about them, about this back and forth between the physical or material and the immaterial of the video. And I think that it's going to allow us to film, maybe in an imaginary way, how these screens might be outfitted in the marble room, even if they're not there.
Both of these screens, as it turns out, play with light. Light is very important. Obviously, light and lighting in how you have conversations on Zoom and on Microsoft Teams. But also, when you go into the marble room now, these screens that you've been making are in and of themselves exquisite and beautiful pieces. But then the marble room has exquisite light as well that comes in at certain times of the day. And when that hits and casts shadows with those screens, we have another kind of show almost entirely, quite beautiful.
The screen as a perforated surface has always been, in my view, a mediator of interior and exterior conditions, of air and light. And I think in my work with the CNC milling and water jet cutting and so forth, typically we might think of a screen as a kind of a flat thing, but in this case, through certain kinds of punctures in flat material like plywood or stainless steel, I can also bend these screens to see the pace of the day, kind of diurnal movements of sun, of shade, trees, and so forth against a surface like a screen. It's enhanced by the perforations that I'm making that allow these flat materials to actually curve or to make space, to make rooms. And in this sense, I really think that the screen is something which, as opposed to just being kind of secondary element that you might put in a window or something like that, really can become a kind of primary element, a primary factor in architecture. The marble room has unbelievably interesting light, and you would never think so in a room that has green marble panels all over the place. But there's a reflectivity in there, and I used to really not like those panels much, but I sure like them now. I'm really impressed with the immateriality that the patterns of the marble give to those really heavy walls. And I like the same effect in my screen.